So we thank you. We had people that was actually going to be a part. I guess they're having problems as well logging on, but we're going to get started. Normally, when we invite people on a platform of IG, because that's where we do most of our lives, I would run down their credentials. I would actually give you a background about themselves. But what I'm going to do now is a little differently. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, and if there's anything that you want to promote, this is the opportunity for you to tell the audience how to contact. If you have a book, you have a platform that you want people to follow you on, be my guest. You can share it with the audience. I'm Joe Ested, founder of Police Brutality Matters. I spent many years in law enforcement. I come from the community most affected by police brutality. So what I did was I started this platform to bring awareness to what police brutality and what's not. Throughout this process, I met some wonderful people in conversation, and I'm building resources over again for people to understand how to change this narrative. What is the real problem when it comes down to how do we fix this problem with police brutality? I also wrote a book called Police Brutality Matters. It's on Amazon. It's a very good tool. I reference policy, procedures, case law, so you know what you can and can't do. That's me. That's who I am. That's present. KrisAnne Hall, I'll let you introduce yourself. Go ahead, KrisAnne.
Well, my name is KrisAnne Hall, and I am an attorney. I practice constitutional law. I was a prosecutor for the state of Florida for about a decade, but now I teach. I not only practice, but I actually teach the Constitution all over America. I have a law enforcement class. It's a 3-hour training on the Constitution that I've been blessed to be able to do all over the country. I have been invited to teach the Western Sheriff's Association, 17 states of sheriffs all at one time. I've taught also at the state and local level, sheriffs, police officers, deputies, all on their constitutional role and duty to secure the rights of the people according to their oath, to defend the Constitution and not just simply blindly enforce laws. I have a book called Sovereign Duty that will be the founding platform, I think, for taking us forward from this last election and how to ensure that our elections are no longer corrupted, how to get our local governments back under control. The name of the book, again, is Sovereign Duty. You can get it online in many different platforms, but you can find me and everything that I do at KrisAnneHall.com, KrisAnnehall.com. And we are on Facebook, YouTube. I am Twitter banned, so you will not find me on Twitter, but I am on Parler if they get back up and running again. And I am on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, Kris, your turn.
Oh, we have a documentary that's coming out as well on how to get your local governments back under control. And the documentary is called Non-Compliant. And you can find the movie at noncompliantmovie.com.
How is before I go to Kris, how is our constitutional expert banned from Twitter? That's funny right there.
Yeah, I got banned back in August, and Twitter refused to tell me whatever I did that ticked them off. So,
go ahead, Chris Goulart.
Okay, well, I've never been. Prior law enforcement, last position was captain. I've served both in the U.S. and internationally with Mr. Joe Ested, the host of this year's program. Joe and I worked together for many years. Started working together in 2006 in Kabul, Afghanistan, until we got transferred. Heat of it in Kandahar. So now we still work together outside, doing different programs. We enjoy working together.
Well, thank you, Kris. Joey.
Oh no.
Yeah, I can't hear Joey.
I can't either.
People said they can hear him.
Oh, it's on mute. Hold on a second, Joey.
The host is muted.
Okay, go ahead.
Wait, hold on.
That's what it's telling me.
I hear you now. I hear you, Joey.
Hold Well, you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm Joe Lucero. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, the South Side. I didn't graduate high school there. I moved to this small town when I was a junior in high school. After that, shortly thereafter, I joined the military. Spent a few years in the military, got out. Spent about 17 years in the workforce before I joined the police department. And I've been with the police department for 14 years now, 3 of those as a sergeant, and here we are.
All right. Thanks, Joey. Ed, Randy.
What's up, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
First and foremost, I'm just pleased to be on this panel with all of you tonight. I'm, looking forward to different perspectives. Trying to find that, use the dialogue to find that common ground. My name is Edwin Raymond. I'm an active lieutenant here in New York. I have about going on 13 years on the force. I've been a lieutenant for about just over 2 years. And I'm actually a whistleblower. 5 years ago, I was featured in the New York Times for exposing the unlawful quota system that's used in many police departments. That's kind of how my story goes. I have a documentary called Crime and Punishment. It's on Hulu, but it's also available for free on YouTube as of July. And it kind of shows the rest of the officers. They call us the NYPD 12. It shows us in our journey in trying to bring police reform from within. We don't bash cops. We're trying to get the cancer out the system. But sadly, some people don't think there's anything wrong with the system as is. I'm also, I've made the decision to run for, so I'm a candidate for the 2021 New York City Council here in Brooklyn, District 40, to continue the work that I've already started in police reform, but obviously expand to other areas that a city council member would be responsible for. Thank you.
Thanks, Edward. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Bravo, running for city council. That is amazing. We need more people to run for local government. That's where our solutions are.
Yes, KrisAnne, you're exactly right. And that's why I commend Ed, in this fight to make change. He is definitely in the right direction because he's a lieutenant now and he's running for office where the salary is actually less than what he currently makes. So when someone says, put your money where your mouth is, he's definitely saying, listen, this is not about money, it's about change. And I'm going to be a part of that change. So I definitely commend Ed for taking that and support him. And go to his webpage because he definitely needs help with his campaign as far as donation. Ed, where can people go?
It's just edwaymond.com, EDWINRAYMOND.com. In terms of social media, I'm most active on Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody got any questions for him before I dive right in? Because I know I guess KrisAnne's time is a little limited here and we started late. No? Okay, perfect. Now, normally we would have some time because of the time restraints. We're just going to dive right into the question. As you know, what's been going on with the U.S. Capitol, we have a lot of mixed emotions, people pointing fingers. How do we fix this problem? I guess is where we need to start. KrisAnne, since your time is limited, I'm going to let you go first because you're going to be the first one leaving the actual conference or panel. What are your response to the Capitol? How do you feel about the Capitol? What do you think? Like, with your overall assessment, like, what do you think is the problem? And how do we get out of this?
Well, the problem is that we had, given anybody's perspective, several million people show up at the U.S. Capitol, and no one showed up at their state capitol. We, as Americans, need to realize there is no such thing as a federal election. Every election happens state and local. The corruption happened state and local. We need to be at our state capitals, making sure that right now we need to be at our state capitals, making sure that our legislators are working on legislation to prevent this voting corruption to ever happen again. State and local government is where the people's control exists. And that's how we get back to a properly running government. the book that I mentioned to you, Sovereign Duty, and the classes that I teach, all are geared to equip people to take back their governments. Most people will say, hey, look, my state's just as corrupt, or my city, my county is just over the top corrupt. Well, those things are like that because we've checked out, because we've been sold a bad bill of goods that voting is how you control government. Voting is not how you control government. That was a lie to make sure that we would become discouraged and quit being involved in politics. You control government by attending your city council meetings, by attending your county commission meetings, by attending your state capitol sessions. And the way that you do that is that you educate the people on the proper role of government, then you organize the people together, and then you have groups of people that trade off and go. Or you be like Mr. Raymond, and you run for office yourself. You say, look, I'm mad as heck. I'm not going to take this anymore. So I'm going to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. People who just vote and complain when nothing goes their way. And so the solution has to be state and local, bottom up, not top down, because we don't control the federal government. We control state and local.
Now, Edwin, you running for office, you're going to be kind of leaving law enforcement, going more into the political arena, is what KrisAnne is talking about. How do you feel about what she said? Do you disagree? How's your feeling on it?
I know it makes sense. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is they don't realize just how important the local government is. So in terms of truly, controlling the results of the politics in the areas that you live in, the local government is the direction to go with that. A lot, people usually register to vote for president, and every now and then you'll see, like with across the political spectrum, every few years you'll see those who lean more towards the right control through the midterms, grab hold of the legislative branch, and it seesaws, back and forth. And it's all good, but it's a hyper local government that really determines your everyday life. With how tax dollars are distributed, how the quality of your schools, and some things that affect your life much more than national politics.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and people don't understand that, and I was one of those people who don't understand that until I started educating myself through KrisAnne and understanding how the powers work when it comes down to federal, state, and local elections. So I definitely thank her for that. Hey Ed, what do you think about the rioting that happened at the Capitol? What's your take? And you being in law enforcement, how do you think the Capitol Police responded? Would you agree, disagree? What was your feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, First Amendment is probably our most important. We have to be able to critique, hold accountable, and just have the dialogue. And the First Amendment is what allows that. But obviously within certain parameters. And every now and then those parameters get crossed. And that's where it becomes controversial because, if you don't disrupt society, then protesting is almost pointless. If you sit in a pen that's pre-crafted, you're told this is where you have to stand, etc., and you're literally pushed off in a way that the normal flow of society is not interrupted. And the reality is it probably won't. I'm a supporter of government, which might shock folks that don't know anything about me, because he chose to disrupt society in a peaceful way to get the message out there. What I see is that threshold of peace was violated. It was crossed, and to the point where people ended up dying in stampedes. People the elected officials, firearm was discharged. A woman loses her life. Someone else possibly committed suicide based on everything. Like it was chaotic, and to me it was kind of an embarrassment. To our nation. Everyone's watching. I went to Europe for the first time 2.5 years ago, and that's when I truly understood the way that the United States is viewed. We are seen as the youngest sibling that's more successful than all the older siblings that all the older siblings look up to. And I'm serious. That's the best analogy I can use. And with the current government, the current executive, the question was, how did you guys let this happen? We look up to you guys. How did you guys let this happen? And I expressed to them that people, from my observation, when I have political back and forth with my colleagues, most of which are conservatives, most of which are white, and they're my brothers, they're my sisters, they're my friends, and we work together. And that's the thing that put us together. But we have opposing views at times, which is okay. But what I found is many times, more so than not, it's a lot of half-baked understanding of things. Once I give them the rest of the rest of the ingredients, the rest of the information, even they're like, oh wow, okay, I didn't realize that. Or, I never knew that. I never thought that way. And I think we can have more dialogue, especially when it comes to race, truth and reconciliation on race, and how things were shaped by race. Because what happens is when you don't know that, right, and you go off merit, you're going to think these are just lazy people who want handouts, so they're going to vote Democrat, so the Democrat can continue to give them handouts, continue to be in office, and one hand wash the other situation off the back working Americans that want to do it the old-fashioned way, by pulling themselves up by the bootstrap. And that sounds good until you get the rest of the information. So I think we need a truth and reconciliation on the lasting effects of things, because we can't sit here on Memorial Day, right, and praise soldiers who have given their lives in battle, understanding the lasting effects of that, and completely disregard the lasting effects of things that are probably not so, that we're not too happy about as a nation. We have to understand the lasting effects of things. We have to have truth and reconciliation discussion about it, so we can reach that middle ground and understand one another a lot better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely totally agree with that. I appreciate that. It was well said. Do anybody, Joey, what do you think about the incident at the Capitol? What's your
So, Joe,
assessment?
I'm just here to talk about the police response.
Yeah.
As well as I do, when you have these type of protests, only certain number of cops show up at these protests. It's not every cop in the city, because we got 6 to 10 districts out there. They got to take care of that. So special units show up to take care of these type of uprisings, protests, whatever you name it. Been doing it for 10 years. So I know Capitol Police had a serious after 9/11. They upgraded everything, including their training, their access, you name it. I refuse to believe they were that unprepared. This is just coming from my personal experience responding to these type of incidents for over 10 years. So I think, based on what I saw in the reports I read and the news articles I read, that these guys were complicit in this. Now, KrisAnne, I know she's probably going to be mad because I said that, but KrisAnne, if you've never been in law enforcement, there's a certain culture in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And I know that culture because I've been in it. It's the same culture that's in the military. And I think some of these guys, not all, but definitely some of these guys were complicit based on the videos I saw and the articles I read. Now, with that said, I know these guys got an intel unit. I know they got special units. I know they got the training. I know they got the staff. I know they got the clout. They knew something big was going to pop off. Why were they not prepared? My guess is they were prepared, but some of these guys, and just look at the videos, they were complicit in what went down at the Capitol. And I think that's unfortunate, because I don't care what side you're on, left or right, extreme left, you have to hold people accountable when you have a job like this. You have to stay impartial. And I didn't see that during what happened at the Capitol.
Well, let me put your mind at ease. I am an Army veteran, and I also understand the culture, especially being a prosecutor for 10 years.
Absolutely.
In the state of Florida, we were sworn law enforcement as well. Yep. But, that was the one thing that my husband and I remarked from the very beginning. The videos, it became very, very clear that there was insufficient law enforcement present.
Absolutely.
And what the crazy thing is that everybody knew that there was at least the opportunity for people to show up dishonestly with the purpose of creating violence while pretending to be someone else. You know, they were going to be able to hide in the mob, in the crowd, to create this violence.
Right.
Even so much so that the mayor of DC was, you know, trying to shut down hotels and shut down roadways, and Apple stopped letting people use their Apple Maps in order to find directions to DC. And so there was, like you said, there was plenty of warning that this was a potentiality. And I can tell you, not only being a former prosecutor, but working with people in the First Amendment realm, you know, protests and that sort of thing. We know that whenever there's a protest, you have to have sufficient law enforcement presence. You absolutely have to. And given all the warnings that they had, and this is not just simply a left-right thing. There were radicals of all political persuasions that seized on this opportunity, took advantage of unsuspecting people, created a mob mentality that probably encouraged people to do things that they would not have done otherwise.
Yep.
And the slight presence of law enforcement, in my humble opinion, is more proof to me of negligence on the part of the people in our capital than anything else.
Yeah, and you know, throughout all of this, I mean, we're talking about political arguments. You know, people lost their lives, and more than anything, it seemed like when it comes down to, you know, law enforcement, that job, it seemed like Brian Sicknick was so forgotten during this whole process. And here's a guy who came to work every day and did the job right. And the information I was getting, that he was a good officer, no complaints. I mean, he did what he's supposed to do. He followed, he served.
He loved his job.
Yeah, and the mere fact that he was, you know, hit in the head with a fire extinguisher several times and ultimately losing his life, I just can't fathom that. I'm in shock. I can't understand that. Like, who are we going to hold accountable for that? How did this even take place?
I think this is taking place because we haven't been holding them accountable for a very long time.
Yeah,
it's not just today.
Yeah, and that's sad. You know, and you see a lot of conversation now that if it was Black Lives Matter, the police handle it differently.
Hey,
do anybody on this panel, do anybody agree with that or disagree, and explain why?
Joe, you know what I'm going to say, man.
Go ahead, speak.
If this was, I'm not even going to be BLM. I'll go a step below that. I'll go, if it was a Muslim Brotherhood, if it was the Nation of Islam, how do you think, if it was Farrakhan and his boys, how do you think these guys would respond? Come on, you got to be real. KrisAnne, you got to be real. They would not have responded like this. They would have responded with a lot more force, and I know this because I've seen it. I've seen it for the time I've been in the military and the time I've been a cop. So this is what tells me that some of these cops were complicit. Because if it was a guy walking up with a BLM t-shirt or a Nation of Islam t-shirt, how would these cops have handled that guy? Would they be taking selfies with him? I'm not even talking about the force. I'm talking about the fact they were shaking their hands. Would they be shaking hands with BLM or with the Nation of Islam? I seriously doubt that. That's why I think, again, when I talk about a cultural problem with some police departments, this is what I'm talking about. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a racial problem. I'm saying it's a cultural problem.
KrisAnne, you have anything to respond to that?
You know, a lot of this has to do with the way the media reports and portrays this as well. You know, we have a serious problem with media bias and how they treat some groups over other groups. And it is in my humble opinion, it is the media working in conjunction with certain political biases that are really creating the division in America. And
Yeah.
the best thing that could happen in America is if we just tuned out all of these corporate media provocateurs who actually uh, capitalize and actually profit off of destruction. They profit off division, and chaos is their capital. They make money, more money than you can even imagine, anytime there's violent disruption. So they are the ones that need to be held accountable as well. And I'm
I
not
agree.
talking about eliminating freedom of speech.
I
And I'm
agree.
certainly, of course, I wouldn't be saying that, but that has to happen at the people level. People have to stop getting, uh, sending their money. They have to stop sending their views and their advertising capital to these people.
I
Yeah,
agree with that.
yeah. Ed, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, the media can be quite irresponsible. What's the old adage? If it bleeds, it leads. So,
Right.
but we cannot ignore the reality of implicit bias. This is just implicit bias working in a way that most don't talk about. This is implicit bias working in a way that hurts law enforcement. And I'll tell you, here in Brooklyn, when the new arena, the Barclays Center, was first built, every time it was a hip-hop event, I would run into, we have 36,000 cops here in New York City, right? In the police academy, we're all together training for 6 months. And then after we graduate the academy, there's some people you won't see for 20 years. They'll be at the top of the Bronx, the bottom of Staten Island. But the things that will bring you together with people that work in other boroughs are large events, parades, demonstrations. And every now and then, anything that requires a more person. I would run into cops that I haven't seen in 5, 6, 7 years at the Barclays every time a hip hop event. But yet, when the New York Islanders, a hockey team, which is like 95% white crowd, when they would play, it'd be virtually like almost no police officers there. And it got so bad with police officers getting assaulted at hockey games that there was no hour allowed after halftime. These people would be so drunk, they would assault cops, and it never made the media. And no matter how many times cops got assaulted, it took a while before they said, all right, you know what, the booze at halftime. But yet, every single time there was a hip hop event, again, you just saw it. You saw the presence of force. I'll tell you, Barbara Streisand, who's a Brooklyn native, she actually had an amazing concert at the Brooklyn Center, and I worked that night. And I remember they told us that they're going to take off, they're going to lax the metal detectors because the Upper West Side, the billionaires and millionaires from the Upper West Side, they actually, it was an inconvenience to them. And I said, you got to be kidding me. They're relaxing metal detectors for a crowd, and this is how implicit bias works in a way that can harm law enforcement and other people. So I believe it was absolutely implicit bias in the thinking that because it was this particular crowd, that violence was probably not, was low on the probability scale.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree. Not only lived it, but worked it. So I'm in agreement with what you said because I'm one of many few officers when I have these conversations, someone who actually works a protest and actually participate in a protest. So I get to see both sides of the aisle when it comes down to it. Tom, he as a comment, he says, why is nobody talking about how he feels that Trump incited this riot. He contributed to the atmosphere that went on with the riot prior to them actually taking it over. Do anybody on the panel believe that Trump has a huge part in responsibility when it comes down to how this turned out?
Edwin, again, I absolutely agree with that. That's exactly what happened. I remember, the right-wing media very critical of the last president. Basically connecting to things that, you have to really stretch it. Like when officers Lou and Ramos, detectives Lou and Ramos were assassinated in their vehicles. I'll never forget that day. A horrible day. Immediately, Pat Lynch and so many other folks have said that the blood of those officers is on Obama's hands. And all Obama did was call out the fact that there are issues in law enforcement. It's not as if these radical folks are waiting for instructions from him. The difference with this situation is they legitimately got instructions like fight, storm the Capitol. We're gonna fight. You know, when you like, it's not even hyperbole. It's not figurative. It's civil language that was taken literally, and you know they were called very special people at the end. So I think that seals the deal.
And I'm glad you said that, because KrisAnne, you being a prosecutor, do we have any criminal elements here? Did Trump commit any crimes in your eyes as a prosecutor when inciting? Because we know time and time again, if someone is going to rob and I'm the getaway driver and I'm outside, during that robbery someone gets murdered, that person in that car had nothing to do with actually pulling the trigger inside, but he catches that charge for what happened with that. Could there be a case made or argument made that Trump is responsible for the death of Brian, the Capitol police officer who was involved in this, and any other member who died because of his language?
Well, I would be very careful right now as to what you actually ascribe to Donald Trump's language. The speech that he gave, the speeches that he gave are all transcribed, and what you may be repeating is what the media is saying that he said that he didn't actually say. So I've actually read the speeches, and I found nothing in his speeches that say storm the Capitol. As a matter of fact, within his speeches, because the House is filing articles of impeachment accusing him of inciting these riots. So I immediately, as a prosecutor, went to the speeches themselves to find the legal language of inciting, because it is a very specific legal term. It's a legal standard. It's a two-pronged standard. And there is absolutely nothing in Donald Trump's speeches that encourage anybody to be violent. As a matter of fact, when you read the speeches and what he said himself, he said, don't be violent. He said, be peaceful. He said, we're here to peacefully protest. And so he never actually incited any violence at all. And that's part of the irresponsibility of the media, because they are putting words in his mouth that were not said. Now, this is not actually, I'm not a defender of politics. If you watch my podcast, you know my motto is liberty over security, principle over party, and truth over personality. I am one who criticizes the Republican Party probably more than the Democrat Party, because I am Constitution only, right? And so we have to be very careful about how we ascribe terms like incite, and when we believe what people say are alleged to have said when the media says it. I mean, we have 4 years of the media repeating things that Donald Trump never said and twisting his words. So you have to be very careful. And again, the media does that with other politicians as well. It's not just a Donald Trump thing, because as was said before, they're all about inciting chaos so they can have it. Now, legally speaking, Donald Trump, again, as I said, never told anybody to be violent. And even as far as the law is concerned, it's called a Brandenburg test. And the Brandenburg test for inciting is it has to be directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, and it has to be at the same time likely to incite or produce that immediate action. Okay, so we have the Brandenburg test that was created by the Supreme Court in 1969. We have several cases that come afterward, and the standard for inciting a riot is very, very high. I mean, just to give you an example, you literally have to say, go grab your gun and let's go shoot people now. And then people actually have to leave the scene and go shoot people. So that did not even remotely happen. As again, if you read Donald Trump's speeches, he never said anything about storming anything. He never said anything about that, being violent in any way. His words were actually the opposite. Now, you can get into a moral argument about whether he's morally obligated or not for his actions by just simply being there. But I would be very, very careful about applying standards about people being present at a protest and being morally responsible for the immoral acts of others. That is what communist countries do. That's a Marxist principle. It's called guilt by association. And that's not the same as being an accessory to the crime. First and foremost, because freedom of speech and the right to peaceably assemble are very protected acts in America. So just being present in a situation where other people are acting criminally or immorally does not impugn my character from a public perspective, because freedom of speech and freedom of press are very, very dear to America, and we have to go above and beyond to protect those things.
Okay. Joey, disagree?
I agree that there's not evidence there that would find him guilty of inciting a riot. But we got to be real here. A morally bankrupt president is definitely guilty of immorality in this situation. And I mean, when you say stuff like stand back and stand by, when you say stuff like we're going to take our country back, we're going to take the Capitol back, and he did say something like that after the election, the day Pence was certifying the election. I mean, I know he can't be charged, but you're going to incite a number of people who you told previously to stand back and stand by. That's what I take.
And Edward,
Can I
would you have
ask a question, Joe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Every day on my radio show, I tell people to take the country back. Every day on my radio show, I tell them to fight corruption. Every day on my radio show, I tell them they have to stand up and fight back against their government's corruption.
And I agree with
I will
that.
just tell you that I have been called, because of that speech, by the Southern Poverty Law Center, an anti-government extremist hate group. And so I'm just saying, I'm not trying to defend anything. I am defending freedom of speech. I am defending our right to speak out about government.
And I agree with that, KrisAnne.
Hold on, Joey. Hold on, Joey. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm done.
Okay, so listen, I'm gonna let Joey. I want you to respond, but I would say, in particular, you going back and forth, your language and what you say is a little bit different than the president of the United States, and that's how me and you probably can say a lot of things that is not going to affect a whole lot of people. But the president of the United States, I feel, me personally, needs to be real cautious on what he says. He is the leader, and people are going to take his word or his language a lot more, I guess, serious than just me or you or Joey talking. That's just how I feel. Joey, go ahead.
I agree, but again, let's make sure that we're responding based on the things that people actually say, and not our emotions about what they say. And that's what I'm saying, because I have been held to the wrong standard myself. And so I and as a constitutional attorney, I want to make sure that we are all dealing with proper definitions and dealing with people with proper standards.
Like if a citizen, if I lock somebody up and they've done a horrible thing and I had to chase them and I put the person in handcuffs and I'm walking them back to the car and I yell, slam their heads in the back of the car because they are upset, they're emotional because of what this person did. Me as a law enforcement officer, I can't do that. I've seen the president tell a group of law officers, when you put them in the car, don't put them in easy, just slam their heads in the car. These guys are criminals. I mean, according to our training, we have to bring them in front of a judge, and a jury or a judge will decide whether they're criminals or not. They still have a due process. So his language, me personally, sometimes get reckless to where he creates these situations to where you got to explain or somebody has to interpret. Well, that's not what he mean, or technically by law, him be there and be wild at this Save America rally. I mean, by textbook, the elements may not might not make it to a courtroom, might not fit the umbrella of the cause. But to a group of people who's very upset and believe and know that election was stolen, that be wild might mean something greater than just the terminology of be there and be wild. So I just would look. I'd have hoped a lot of his language that he's had in the past, we could have done without. It would have probably saved a lot more fires to be putting out or trying to explain.
Yeah, and that's why I said it is a distinction between, you can make the argument of morality, but you can't make the argument of legality.
Yeah, and I agree. Joey, you had something to add? Edward, you have something to add?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with your perspective on this one. But you have to remember that the dog whistle, the Southern strategy, just knowing exactly what to say and how to say it, so you can have the technicality in saying, well, technically say tell them to go do X, Y, Z, but knowing exactly how they're gonna respond, the right words, that's what I believe is going on, and it's still very irresponsible because again, you're not gonna feel the consequence as direct as the average person who's caught up and unfortunately sees things in a perspective, that's been presented to them even completely makes sense.
Right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out. It's at the hour. Thank you for staying on, even though you said you had something to do and you only have 30 minutes. So I appreciate that.
Back a little bit.
So next time, I'll make sure we have everything. Joey, I appreciate you, brother, man. I love the upfront forward. No chaser, no shot, whatever it's called. I just love the directness, and that's needed. These conversations are needed to actually to bring awareness and to bring change. We can't fix a problem without acknowledging what the problem is. A lot of people go to bed and they just hope that it just goes away, and we wake up again, the problem still exists. Like I tell everybody on my IG, it's okay to fight and stand up for what you believe in, but you got to live to fight another day. We got to be careful on how we fight. We definitely have to be careful on how we fight. So with that said, I'm going to close out, and I love you guys. And anybody else want to close? Anybody else have anything to say? We're closing out. KrisAnne?
Thank you, everybody.
Joey?
All right, good, brother. Thank you.
Ed?
Hello?
Yeah, Ed?
Yeah. Just thanks for this. We got to do this again. This was actually pretty good dialogue.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks a lot, Ed. Thanks, everybody. Remember, support Ed. He's running for city council. EdwardRaymond.com. He needs the support, financial support. He's actually from the neighborhood. He understands the dynamics of what the problem is when it comes down to the culture of policing, how to fix those problems. He's taken another step into being part of the solution. So let's definitely give him a helping hand. Guys, I'll see you later, and I love you guys.